Welcome to Coffee with Creatives. I'm so excited to have you here as a guest and honored that you're a part of this. I've really enjoyed our conversations recently, catching up, your energy, your excitement, even through text and through emails. They truly just come through. And for anyone
Oh,
who doesn't know who you are, can you describe what you do and how you became a photographer?
oh my gosh. Well, first, I got to say thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here and right back at you with your amazing energy. Like your emails just light up my inbox. So,
Thank you.
hey, thank you. Thank you. How did I become a photographer? Oh, I have the classic story. I got my camera when I was little. It was my dad that gave it to me. But I guess I stuck with it because I lost my dad when I was 10. And that really cemented to me what photos can be, because that's my memories of my dad. I use those to just remember. And as you get older, of course, memories kind of fade, and these are just like the bridges. So that's why I became a photographer. It was very important to capture moments,
Wow.
memory, things like that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. The power of a photograph is unbelievable. I think sometimes as creatives we can lose that, just how powerful and how impactful they can be. Today we're going to talk a lot about creative projects and creativity, ideas. We're going to dive into two of your creative projects, FarmHER and Summer of 75. But first, I want to get into creativity and ideas. How do you come up with your creative ideas?
Oh my gosh, that is a bad question because anybody that knows me says my brain is a bad space. It's a scary space. So short answer, generally my brain. I am heavily influenced by just life itself. So just what I'm going through. And it not bad things, but I mean, I can go out for a walk and these ideas start to populate in my head. And then you get all those goosebumps and you're excited and sometimes it's sorting out things that are happening in my life or speaking to or answering questions, which is one of the projects, Summer of 75. It's kind of autobiographical, but it's
Mm.
also sorting out questions in my head. um, and sometimes it's just these really, I'm driving down the road and I'll be like, oh wow, oh this is, wait a minute, this might be a really cool perspective. um, so really short answer, out of my brain, kind of a messy spot. Everybody has it, everybody has that. It's just sometimes we're really afraid to let it happen, and I spent a lot of years being like, nobody's ever going to be interested in what is coming out of my brain because I didn't feel that I was worthy, I guess.
Mm.
A little bit of imposter syndrome there, being like, my ideas aren't good enough. And no, your ideas are valid, absolutely valid.
Amazing. And so, when you have some of these ideas, how do you explore them and flesh them out? So, how do you explore that idea so that you can make it into a reality?
Um, that's a good question. So it used to be I would get overwhelmed with ideas. I would be like, I thought of this idea, and you'd almost get it, all these ideas jumbled in your head. And I've learned to slow down in a way, and just process. So first you get that initial, oh wow, and you get all these ideas and how it's going to flow and what you can see, and maybe you can see one or two ideas for a shoot or a session or something, and then your mind starts to be like, this could happen, or I could do this way. um, and that's when I just kind of slow down and take a breath and just kind of let the idea flow through, let it sit, rather than trying to rush it. And I realized that now one of the reasons I was rushing was because I felt that every idea I was getting, I had to bring forth. And some ideas aren't mine. Some ideas come and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. And then you start to go through it and you realize you're trying to force the idea. Those aren't your ideas. You just
Mm.
let them go because there's somebody else's idea to populate. And maybe they've come to you because you need to mention them in casual conversation. Oh, I had this idea, or this would be a really cool thing. And the person whose idea it actually is will hear, or maybe just because you think them, they'll move on. But yeah, so I work through that way.
Wow.
And yeah.
I've heard of that idea a few times from Julia Cameron, from Rick Rubin. Right now, it's a book that I've mentioned several times on this podcast around creativity and this idea that there are ideas out there, or there's source and inspiration out there, and then they almost come through us, and we're just simply the vessel to make them come to reality. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this as well in Big Magic. That's a book that definitely lit me up. And I know you're familiar with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way,
Yep.
where she talks about this. You mentioned maybe that idea isn't yours, and it's almost as if you're letting them go and passing them on. How do you make peace with that, especially when it's an idea that has really excited you or has lit you up? You've got loads of ideas, but then you almost face that resistance, so you are passing it on in a way. Is that how the process has worked for you, and how do you approach that?
It's hard. That is hard. That is a huge growth thing. Part of that's ego, right? Like, it came to me, it's my idea, and nobody could ever do this idea as well, or this is going to be an epic idea. I want to be the one who brings it to life. But over time, I have sort of the same idea. There's all these ideas. We are the vessel. When I go to try and do an idea and you get the goosebumps and then you start to think it through, if I find resistance, or I'm like, oh, to accomplish it is always extra layers. It's almost like it's effort and it's work and it's not flowing. And it's almost like this jarry kind of feeling, like it's just all disconnected. That's when I know this isn't my idea. And if I keep forcing it, I'm not giving the thought, the idea, its best representation. I'm not honoring it. I'm actually trapping it, and I'm not the person for it. There will be an idea that is mine that I can make beautiful, and I can tell a story, and it will be wonderful, and it will flow through me and be so beautiful and creative. It's just not this idea. So it's opening yourself to the idea that everybody can be creative, and it's not a competition, right?
Truly.
You create beautiful art and I create beautiful art, and we just celebrate that, and the ideas flow. So that's where you kind of have to get to that. And it's hard. It's still really hard. And I'm like, no, it's not mine.
Okay, so I understand that process. So letting it go when it's not yours. However, as a creative, when you do have an idea and the ideas are flowing through, you're still going to face obstacles, friction, maybe some challenges. How do you then continue to follow through in light of those challenges? Because personally, I've had ideas and it's excited me. I've got loads of other ideas that have flown out of that. And so for anyone who's listening out there, if they have a creative project and are facing challenges, what is your advice to them, or your suggestions for overcoming challenges?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am the queen of, if it's going to go wrong, it's happening. It's going to happen to me. If it's supposed to be a sunny day, it's going to be a hurricane. Like it's me. So the best way is, I always say, eat a tiny little bit of the pizza at a time. So instead of being like, oh boy, I've got to accomplish all this, tiny little pieces, break it down. So yeah, you're going to face challenges. I think that the passion, when the idea is yours and you're passionate about it, and you're just so excited to see the way it's going to be, and you can actually see the end result in your mind, you find the way, and the universe gives you those opportunities to overcome challenges. And sometimes the challenges are given to us because where we were going wasn't actually the best way, and we just weren't being mindful of the signs, right? Like, so sometimes I go into a shoot and it's, the model, the last minute decides I'm not going to be there, or something along those lines, and I find somebody else, and you're like, wow, okay, I can't imagine now the other person, although they would have come and done an okay job and been great, I just can't imagine this shoot any other way now. And if I look back, that little hesitancy was there in me already, even though I had asked them, and maybe I asked them for the wrong reasons. So you just have to very carefully plan it out and work through the challenges, and don't get discouraged. And if you are discouraged, it's totally okay to be like, I'm putting you aside for right now. You're annoying me. I'm frustrated. I can't do this. I'm going to go off and do something else. And that's totally okay as well.
Beautiful. I love that. Making peace with the ones that one needs to let go of, but then also working your way through the ones that can be challenging, but it's okay to put them on pause. That the picture of taking a small bite out of the pizza is definitely going to stick with me.
One, right? Yeah.
Totally.
You feel it's like, oh my gosh, you just like eat the peppers off of it. Just and then you solve that one, and you got a little bit of like, okay, I did it. Okay, next one.
Yeah. Definitely, it truly is about that. When you want to gain momentum, it's just about, putting the shoes on before you go out for the run. Can you put the shoes on? Can you tie the laces? Can you get your headphones on? Just slow little increments towards the final outcome. And then before you know it, you're outside the door and you're taking a few steps, and then you're on your run, you're on your way. So,
and I also think that we as creatives feel that if we encounter a challenge or something, that means we're not as good as we and good creatively as we could be. Like we're just not good enough to do it. I think that part of the mindset is we're supposed to be perfect. Oh, if I've got this idea, it should completely flow perfectly, and it should look like a Wes Anderson film, completely edited on the screen, right? And nobody sees all the bloopers and all the stuff on the cutting room floor, and how many times Wes Anderson got angry and left the set and struggled, and the actors did the same thing, because we only ever see this finished, polished project. And to be creative sometimes is very frustrating, and that's what you just sit with it, and you're like, okay, I really believe in this, and I'm going to push it out forward, and you can do it.
So could you share a little bit more around your experience with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way? I believe you did it twice. I'm currently on week 7.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I was just reading last night actually about one of the examples that she gave in the book was around filmmakers comparing their work to George Lucas's work, and they're not comparing it to George Lucas's experimental work or the things before Star Wars. They're comparing their work to Star Wars. And this book was written in the early 90s, and maybe that was more of a relevant kind of Star Wars example there. But what is your experience with The Artist's Way, and how has that impacted your creativity?
So I've done it twice. I should probably do it again. In fact, after our conversation, I went and dug it back out again, and I was like, I need to do you. So the first time I did it, it sort of blew my mind. And that's where it re-centered my inner thoughts on creativity. And it was really that comment about comparing yourself to that finished, not really Star Wars, because it's a little bit foreign, but the whole idea, right? Like,
yes.
And it holds so true today with Instagram and TikTok and all those finished things, and we feel we need to be here. It really, even the weekly tasks and challenges, I think, like I said to you, I found them a bit overwhelming. And I think that's the one drawback maybe to that whole thing is our lives are different than when the book was written. We don't maybe have as much space to be able to do the tasks. So I found in the first one, I was becoming very stressed. It was like, I need to get all of these things accomplished. So I took a pause because I was realizing I wasn't doing this book service. I wasn't doing my self-service. And I just did the ones that I could do. I picked some and I made a conscious thing that I'm going to come back and redo this whole thing. And what I've done, I will think about when I hit here, and I won't do those ones again. I will do the ones that I haven't done, but I will think about what I had accomplished before. And I can also think about how I would do these ones now if I was going to try and do them. And doing that also taught me, I think it also really helped with letting ideas go, right? Was that I don't have to do everything all at once. So it's been very formative. I really recommend it to anyone who wants to deep dive into their creativity.
Yeah, second that as well. Highly recommend it. And I think it's a book that I'm going to keep personally returning back to every few years, because it's a great way to see your growth and also to just reconnect with the simple idea of reconnecting with your artist child and being creative and taking yourself on these artist dates. And the power of journaling and fleshing out ideas just has had a huge impact on me and my creativity. And it's awesome to be able to hear your experiences with it as well. So I wanted to move into some of your creative projects. Specifically, wanted to start off with Summer of 75.
Okay.
Could you share what the Summer of 75 is? And then I'd love to share my screen, share some images, and we can talk through a few of those.
Absolutely. So the Summer of 75, side note, there's a lot more that happened in 1975 than I was aware of. I just picked this year. I was like 75, kind of middle of the 70s. It can't be too important. And then started to research and was like, holy crap, there was a lot that happened in 1975. Like that's when VHS and Beta started, believe it or not. Microsoft started. Wow. Yeah, Rocky Horror Picture Show came out. So there's like all these things. The Summer 75 really, it comes from some of my Sam Abell courses, the way I'm telling it, but it really is exploring how a photo lives. Like we say that, almost every photographer says, we want to create photos that carry on our legacy, carry on your legacy. We want to create photos that connect, that tell your story. But do we actually do that? And do photos actually hold that power? So the Summer 75, the premise is that back in 1975, this girl is reaching the point where she would have to go to university, college, but keeping in mind that in 1975, there weren't as many opportunities for women. I mean, it was starting, but there wasn't the best. And she doesn't want to go and be a secretary or whatever. So she gets an invitation to her cousin's wedding, and somebody gives her a graduation gift of a camera, because cameras were given as gifts then, because they were like, woo, no, nobody had cell phones. And she takes off on a road trip. And the images are from the places and people that she meets. We are viewing them through the eyes of her granddaughter now, who is helping her family to clean up Granny's stuff and finds this shoebox photos. And the idea is, can we connect? Are we able to connect to this story? Are we able to connect to these characters? And can we have an experience? Can her journey of 75 become ours? And do we then reflect on our own journeys and our own photos and sharing? So it's got a lot of layers happening. Can get very deep if you want it to.
So I'll pull up some images here, and then if you could share a little bit around what the idea was, or how you set up these different shots,
And I have to add, I'm still shooting this because I did do an exhibit of it, and everybody wanted to know who's the grandmother. And the grandmother is not in these photos. I just actually found her. So we're going to start shooting her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So this has become, I guess, maybe that was the first session I did. And this is fleshing out the idea. There was this idea in my head. It had no form. And I'm shooting just blindly, trying to make it become real. So I had reached out to a friend who had a V-dub, a beetle that I had used before. His beetle wasn't available, but he had a Gia. He reached out to another friend, and we wound up with, I think there was like 6 bugs, a people mover, and a bus. And I collected 4 models with the thought that one of them could possibly be the lead. Like, I knew I needed a lead character, but none of them spoke to me that way. So the idea that I came to them with was, this is very loose, but I need you to pretend that you're models for a commercial shoot back in 1975. And we shot it that way, as if they were for fashion or cars or whatever. We were shooting it this way. And so the blonde was like, I'm going to be Farrah Fawcett, because Farrah Fawcett, that was her like 1 year of fame. I think she started in Charlie's Angels. So they kind of adopted who they wanted to be. They created their own personas, and we just ran with it, which is amazing.
You mentioned these ideas, you were fleshing them out as they came to you and collaborating with the models and the subjects that you had. So this was the second image that I wanted to share from that series.
Yeah. So I wanted, as the idea, so this is a third shoot, I believe. So the idea was becoming a little bit more solid. And I knew that the lead character was also on a journey of exploration, and perhaps the people that she was meeting could be reflections of people of herself. So because she was out traveling, I thought, she can't travel and not meet like a biker, somebody who's out there who doesn't really fit in society. So I reached out to a woman who I photographed multiple times, but she is outside of society. She is a welder. She's a journeyman. She's a millwright. She actually helped to build the building that her factory's in. And that's her bike. And I said, you just pretend that you're out there, you're searching like the bikers would be. And this was our shoot. Now we're going to come back with the grandmother and do the shoot so that the grandmother can ride with her, and there'll be photos like that.
Ah. All right. So is this project self-funded, or how does it work in terms of finding the models and creating the actual end product? What is the process behind that?
So part of it, I have applied to the Ontario Arts Council, the OAC, for the grant to cover it. But when I work with models, I offer payment or prints. I give them an option. I will never work for a model and not either pay or provide something, because that's not fair. So most of the models just want images. They're happy with images. Some do want to be paid, so I pay a day rate, and you just have to budget that. Budget that in.
All right. So this looks like the 4 that were in the previous 2 images back. Can you share a little bit around this one?
Yeah. So what blows my mind is that's a people mover, and apparently it's rare. So the guy shared with us, it's $150,000 Volkswagen people mover bus, and I had people like, the models were climbing all over it. He shared that at the end, and I was like, oh no. So the reason we did this shoot, I think it's probably going to become the cover story of it, but it came from, he was talking about, apparently these buses are geared to, you can automatically drive them and they're geared that they will move at the pace that somebody can walk. And I was like, there's no way that'll happen. And I was like, let's try. And the girl in green just kind of started to walk behind it. And I was like, oh my gosh, let's Abbey Road this. So they all kind of fell in a line and they're actually going right foot, left foot, right, as they're walking to try and stay in line. So I find when you work with people, and after the first, 15, 20 minutes of that initial nervousness, people really become invested. And that's when you kind of really know that this idea is yours, because people become really invested in it and they start to collaborate and share ideas and actually really reach into themselves to work with the shoot. And these 4 models, they literally did that. They jumped right on this, measured themselves out. And yeah, that's a big part of creativity, is that collaborative energy that comes back and forth.
I love that. And to actually see and experience that, and to have a creative idea, and then you're sharing that idea with others and really co-creating now as well. That's a really beautiful space to be in. Thanks for sharing that. This is the next image that came through. Tell us what's happening here.
So this is Sahara. They are a professional performer.
Okay.
And I love to work with creatives, and in all aspects. I knew I wanted Sahara. I have worked with them before in the project. So I reached out and I explained what the project was, that it was 75 and I needed them to be a performer, which they are anyway. I wasn't sure how I was going to spin them into the story till I started to research, and I found that the Rocky Horror Picture Show came out in 1975. So literally we're doing a shoot with a performance. And I think the idea will be, now that I know that Rocky Horror Picture Show is when I come back with the grandmother, that literally she's met Sahara and she just wants to see her perform and take a photo. I think that's where it's going to be. So yeah, Sahara's, this is a street actually just around the corner from my studio. And this was Sahara's version of what 1975 would be like.
Incredible.
Thank you.
I love that. And again, as you're sharing these photos, just hearing how the story is being pieced together, and really excited to see the final outcome. Is there a date for when you'd like this to be completed, or is that part of the process where this is something you're creating and the story is developing, and so there is no end date? It's simply you're in it right now.
I'm in it right now, but I 110% believe that ideas have expiration dates. Nothing annoys me more than like season 44 of blah, like Survivor, right? I think haven't they survived everywhere? Come on. So no, I would like to have it finished shooting at the end of this summer. That's the one thing with it. Majority of it has to be kind of shot in the summer, because I want that essence, that vibe of that, August, and you smell the dry grass and the warm air and stuff like that. So yeah, and then I like to have it at one of the art galleries, to make it's a fully immersive exhibit, because it comes with its soundtrack and it comes with the video. I'm going to go back, when I'm going back now, shooting video that I can intermix.
Wow.
Into it. Yeah.
Oh, amazing, Heather. So incredible. I'm loving hearing about this project and how it's coming to life.
Thank you.
definitely please share with us when it is available, and hopefully
Thank
can
you.
visit it myself too. So this is the
Yeah.
final one that I picked.
Yeah. So I call this one bugged out, because and you have no idea. This is a half an hour of like, you want to talk about challenges. We are on like pulling your hair, and we're on a lawn. It's the Abbey Road one where the bus and the people are walking. So it's just grass. It's all on level. And you can see the gray bug, which is the, like, literally past this orange one. Then there's the gray one. Where it was seated, when the guy would pull it ahead and stop it, it would roll, it would come off. And I don't know how many times tried to back it up and move it over just a bit, and there was a divot, and it would just roll in, and it would go too far. The seat would come up and block the yellow. We finally wound up having to move everybody 5 feet ahead, which then presented the problem of getting everybody all lined back up again.
Yeah.
And then we get this all done, and the one model was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I hadn't got that far. Just do something. And she's like, well, we did all this. What are we going to do? And I was like, do something epic. And so that's why her face is kind of like, is this epic enough? But yeah, so this was definitely hitting a lot of challenges.
Well done for seeing it through and getting it, because yeah, there's like a sliver of the yellow bug right at the end, and I can't imagine how frustrating that must have been to make that all line up. But you got the shot, and congrats. How many images are you into this right now? How many would you say is part of the current set, and where would you like to end up with? Is there a number?
I don't have a number, because I don't tend to do that. I overshoot. I'm a terrible overshooter. Oh my God, way too many no, I have no idea. But I don't like to say I'm going to have this many, because then I start to feel the stress.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I said I was only going to have 20, but I'm finding 25, right? Am I just like, so I think the story will tell itself. I actually had Hugh Whitaker, who was on. He and I went through, I did a mentoring session, and he went through, and we already had we've culled out some. It was very interesting to see his, the little mini exhibit that I had. It was very interesting to see actual viewer like reaction. And it was fun to see the ones that like I really liked. Didn't get as much traction with people, some of them, and other ones people loved. So it was very interesting to see those things. So yeah, I don't have an actual number yet, and I would be stressed.
Yeah. Have you ever found that with a client as well, when they ask you, how many images can we expect from this session? And it just varies.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you get that? Like, you're gonna come for 8 hours. How many photos am I supposed to get back? And you're like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I've gone and had 2 shooters and shot 10 hours and struggled to get 600 photos, right? Because it was just, there wasn't anything to shoot. And then I've shot 4 hours and had like 800 photos because there was so much going on.
Yeah, it totally depends on the flow and the vibe, and especially with personal projects, I think it's a great call to keep it open and to just really feel it through and see what comes from the collaborative process that you're currently in. The next one that I wanted to go through was FarmHER. Before I share any images, what is FarmHER and what's the significance of that project?
FarmHER shares the stories of women in farming, in the farming lifestyle. And so, little segue, I have a not-for-profit. It's called Inspire, the Women's Portrait Project, one of my creative projects. that was only supposed to be 35 images is now over 500. It's a not-for-profit. It's 5 years old. Yeah. So your ideas are valid. Doesn't matter. Go for them, because you never know where they're going to take you. So FarmHER, I grew up in a rural community surrounded by women on farms. My mom comes from farming, but still, people hear the word farmer and they think of a guy. It's one of the last holdouts of kind of that gender split. And Inspire shares stories of women. So this project is very connected to me. And basically, I am reaching out to women in the farming lifestyle. I'm coming and I'm photographing them, telling their story as they do what they do. And they also have a written component, an autobiographical story that they tell. They tell a section of like a portion of their story about their life. Yeah, so that's where FarmHER came from.
Amazing. So here's the first image. What's happening here? And
so this is Jenny. She is from Toronto. She grew up in Toronto. She did not farm. She had no farming whatsoever. Her great uncle had a farm out here where I live. So I live in Peterborough, near Peterborough, Ontario. So her great uncle had a farm here. And when she was in her late teens, early 20s, she took a course that I didn't know existed, where you could go and kind of apprentice to be a market gardener. And it stuck. They moved out here and ironically purchased 4 or 5 acres, and it was the corner lot of what used to be her great uncle's farm. So that's so cool. So these are her daughters. This is her huge market garden. She has a gardening, little garden stand that you can come up and buy from. Yeah.
And were you with her for the day? How did you approach this particular session?
So this, and as a lot of personal people are, this lifestyle, they don't welcome photography in. To them, a photo would be more a very formal posed photo. They just don't see the importance of what they're doing, and they feel a little awkward. So I didn't spend a whole day, but I did spend 2 or 3 hours. And to begin, we just sat and chatted. She told me about the course that she had taken, told me about her daughters. She had just had a baby, I think about 4 weeks before I was there. She talked about her baby, talked about her gardening business. And then I just said, can we come out and I'm just going to photograph you doing things. And she's like, well, what do you want me to do? And I was like, well, what would you be doing right now? And she said, well, I have to pull carrots. And I'm like, well, then let's pull carrots. And she just started to work, and her daughters came along and kind of wound through, and they were complaining. They were yelling at her, Mom, we're hungry. We want a snack. And she was like, well, pick a vegetable, pick something. I forget what it was. And they went along, and the oldest one, as you can see, is eating something. The younger one does not like bugs. And there is a spider down by your sister's foot. And she's and that's how we worked through it. And the more she worked and the more the camera clicked, the more she kind of forgot what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that's how we got that one.
Beautiful. I love how the younger daughter has a camera in her hand as well, or it looks like it could be a camera.
No, it is. She goes around and she has like those old point and shoot ones that have the battery and the lens goes in and out, and she just takes absolutely photos of everything. I don't even know if there's an SD card in it, but yeah.
Great. All right, and then the next image right here.
So this is Kathy. She is in the dairy farming lifestyle. She has been a dairy farmer. I think she said, well, she and her husband have been a dairy farming for 35, 40 years, and they've never had a vacation, because this is the one part of farming you can never leave. because the cattle need to be milked 2 to 3 times every day, 7 days a week. So dairy farmers, this is their life. They revolve around the barn. This is actually one of the last shots taken in this barn. They just went robotic. So I get to come back, and now they can have vacations. And she was telling me the very first thing that they're going to do, they're going to rent a cottage and go in July to a cottage. So yeah, this is her doing her chores. She and her husband begin their day at 3 o'clock in the morning and work till 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea, or at least I don't have any idea as to what the level of work that farmers go through. And okay, the final image here. Can you share with us about this one?
So this is the one thing, right? Being women, most of the time they have children, the younger ones, right? Have youngsters, and not always access to, grandparents or neighbors or whatever to come 24/7 to watch their kids. So the children start to come out. I think there's even other ones that I've taken, like she's only, I think, 10 months old, and some of the photos that I've taken of another family, her toys are in the barn. She's like, some of her toys are actually in the barn. So the children become immersed in this lifestyle, and that they're with mom. It's just like as if, you have your own baby and you take your kid to work. Well, this is that. So they're going out to do their chores right now. And this little sweetheart is 3, and she helps her mom feed the sheep and the cattle and the chickens and everything else. Yeah. And has been going to the barn apparently since she was 2 weeks old. So
wow.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's watching this on YouTube, you'll see the title. It says Sam Abell's name here. So Sam Abell, the American photographer. Can you share who Sam Abell is and your connection with Sam?
I get to fangirl right now, right? Sam Abell is an amazing human, absolutely amazing human, and a brilliant photographer. I think he was 31 years at the National Geographic.
Wow.
4 of his photos are in the top 3 or 4 in the top 10 photos of all time for National Geographic. And he offers courses. If you're into storytelling, you need to go and check out Sam Abell. He's got some talks on YouTube. He's got amazing books. You need to check him out because he is one of the masters at storytelling. And I was lucky enough to take 3 courses with him.
Wow. And he was a part of some of these projects as well. How did Sam connect with you on your personal work?
So FarmHER is, as I'm doing it, Sam will final curate it, and he does critique some of the images. He is a master storyteller. So and he did shoot Mennonites in Ontario, the Mennonite families. So he connects with the challenge of trying to capture this lifestyle and the people that are in it in a natural way. And he sets a high bar. So he's really good to help me overcome hurdles, drawing on his experience, but also to point out what I'm doing right, where like, this is the path you're on, this is good, this is what you need to do. But you could try and do this or try and do this. Gives you ideas. Yeah, so he's helping me to curate FarmHER. So no pressure when I shoot, like my brain's like, but yeah.
And he came out with you on some shoots as well, is that right? Were you shooting some of these projects together, or?
So when we do your courses, he shoots too. So when you do a course with Sam Abell, whatever he's teaching you, he is doing the project alongside you.
Wow.
So, yeah, so no, Sam is in the US, and when I was taking courses with him, it was COVID. So I don't even think we could have been together. I would love to go to Japan with him. He does a couple of courses in Japan. So I would love to do that. Yeah, maybe we can all go. That would be, yeah.
Keep me in the loop, or keep us in the loop
I
for
will,
sure.
yeah.
That sounds great. It's so worth spending time with photographers that you admire and having mentors. Can you speak a little bit around how to find the right mentor, or how did you know that Sam was the right mentor for you?
I didn't know till I went to learn from Sam about how I shoot, why he was the right mentor for me.
Okay.
But I think if you go and look, there'll be work that speaks to you. Like you're like, wow. It's not how amazing the work is, because there's mind-blowing work that you're like, wow.
Yeah.
But it's whether, as you start to look through an artist or a photographer's body of work, you're just immersed. You be drawn right into it. And it's not necessarily, it might not necessarily be Sam Abell. It could be Larry Fink. It could be, you know, it could be you, Sasha, and somebody can be looking and being like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. And I think it's because components of that work are the way that you are shooting or want to shoot. It's the way you want to tell a story. And when you find that, you connect. If you connect with that person, you learn, because you're not going to duplicate and copy them, but they're going to be able to help to guide you on recognizing the points in you that speak to you in their work, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Yeah. They're going to help guide you along so that you can tell your story the way you want to.
Amazing. Yeah, it's not necessarily at all about copying them or being like them. It's about them finding the best in you, and then you using that to share yourself and to create from you and how you're designed. So what is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned from Sam? What would you say is something that really stands out for you?
Something that really stands out for me is, so there's two things really, because the man's brilliant. So there's always so much left on the table. The first is, what stops me when I go to shoot or when I'm editing. And I think that is something that everybody should really focus on. And it's so easy to do, because when we're editing, we're like, oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. And that's basically what Sam asked us to do, was go out for a walk. And when you're like, oh, take a photo of it. Or when you're editing, record the ones that really make you stop. Like, oh, wow, I love that. And then pull them all together and try and see what the common thread is. And you'll be surprised. Maybe it's cinematic lighting or frames or motion or whatever. Everybody's different. But I think that once you start to identify that, your brain subconsciously guides you when you go to shoot. And you shoot better, because you're shooting for those moments that stop you, and they speak to your clients if you're shooting for cash job, pay job, because that's what also stops your clients. So you're just refining what you're doing.
Wow.
And the other part is, Sam's biggest thing that spoke to me was, our world is drowning in photos. Like literally, right? Everybody's got a phone full of photos. We take photos are everywhere. But a lot of those photos have no life. They exist for a moment and then they fall away. And the summer of 75 is the exploration of that. How do we create photos that have a life, that tell a story, that carry on past this moment? And carry on. Like, if you look back at all those iconic photos from, 100 years ago, even, right? That the guy sitting in New York on the steel girder,
I love that image.
Right?
Incredible.
Right?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? But it's how old? I think it's got to be like almost 100 years. And we're still like, oh my goodness. So what gives a photo life? How do you create an
Mm,
image that will live on?
beautiful. Thanks for sharing those two powerful lessons, because it's not often that we'll go back over their own images. Typically, we go onto the next one, and then we're onto the next and the next, and we're kind of in that flow. But really taking time to take stock of what has stopped you in your tracks, identifying that, and really becoming aware of that, and then building that into your work, and then to create with that in mind images that have a legacy, really, and have life beyond us. That's really the power of photography, isn't it? We started this conversation with memories or images that you have of your father, and just how powerful and impactful they can be. And if we can find that within our own work, our personal work, our creativity, and then share that with others, because you also mentioned this is why our clients and people who book us, this is what they see in our work, but it's up to us to find it within our work too. So I wanted to end with how these creative sessions have impacted your paid and professional work, because a lot of the photographers listening to this may be doing some personal work, but how can a photographer who's inspired by this to create some personal work have it impact their paid and professional work? Do you see that happening within your own work? And tell us about your experiences there.
It 100% does. Yes. It doesn't matter. I know it doesn't have to be huge, right? I think you mentioned in one conversation that it was your mother or your mother-in-law was coming for visit, and you were going to take photos of the visit, and you said you were like, maybe I'll do it from her perspective.
Yeah.
So and like that is just an incredible story to shoot. And it, when you think about it, you're like, well, that it only might mean just something to myself and my mom or whatever, but you're refining your storytelling skills. You're refining your composition skills, because you want to be able to shoot from her perspective. You want to share, not just like it would, you could take a photo of like somebody standing like a Wes Anderson in the middle of a staircase, right? And that's cute and that's wonderful, but you might want to have a bit more. So I find that these creative outlets where you can shoot, you can try ideas, maybe they fall completely flat, but you can assess them and you can be like, okay, well, what happened there? Why didn't that get to where I want it to be? Or it really works and you're like, oh, wow, how can I carry that further? It gives you the confidence in your paid work to take your clients that much farther. We want to create an amazing experience for our clients. And they come to us because they connect with our work. Doing creative project enhances our work, so we can give them a better experience. We can tell their story better. We can come off all the trends. We don't have to feel pressured by the trends, because we have this voice and it's our voice, and we're refining it and making it stronger. And now we're going to share it with our clients in telling their story. We don't have to feel pressured to be like, we have to have so many motion blur and so many, tilt shifts and so many this and so many that. We just tell the story the way we would like it to be told. So really being yourself.
Love that, Heather. Really, that really struck a chord with me as well. Finding your voice through your creative pursuits, through your work, and then bringing that into your professional work is so powerful, and a message that I think it's important to hear that message often, and then to wait for those ideas and start creating
Yeah,
from that space.
it is.
Amazing.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one to do, right? And I find it would be harder. It's harder to find your voice if you stay within your paid work.
Yes.
Easier to find your voice if you're doing it in your creative work, because you're giving yourself permission to make mistakes, and we're less kind to ourselves in our professional work.
Mm,
So in your creative work, you just take away all those barriers and you can find your voice. What do I want to say? How do I want to say it? And
incredible.
then it turns out and you're like, I can try and do this over here.
100%. Heather, thank you so much for sharing your two projects with us, your work and your heart and your creativity. Really appreciate it. So, quick fire questions. What would you say is one of your favorite photography books
My
or
favorite
favorite
photography,
books?
one of my favorite books,
Mm,
Braiding Sweetgrass or Hold Still by Sally Mann, if you want to get into photography.
amazing. And what is a go-to piece of software that you love as a photographer?
I am not techie. Anybody that knows me is laughing at this moment. They're like laughing hard. So I have Apples, I shoot Canon, I shoot 35 mil Polaroid and 8 mm, like old school wind up
Yeah.
film. And that's as techie as this gets.
Okay, perfect. What would you say is one of your favorite movies or films of all time?
Nomad Land. Go watch it. Go watch it.
What
Yeah.
year is that from, or who's that? I haven't even heard of it. What's the who's the director, or
Oh my gosh.
no?
So I'm gonna blank now because you
That's
didn't
okay.
have part in the fast fire. It's literally a commentary about a woman. It's from a book,
Mm.
and it speaks to homelessness in the United States, where what the middle class is now living in like vans and trailers. So it's not RV lifestyle, like it's not
Yeah.
that. It's the actual social economic, and it's about a woman who loses everything because the plant closes, so the city closes. That's a scenario like in the States, right? They build their cities around big plants. And she goes and lives in a van, and it's just her navigating this. It's an amazing thing. Um, yeah, it's definitely worth a watch.
Great. I do want to end with this then.
All right.
With what are you most
Okay.
excited for in 2023? Outside, so we've wrapped the quick fire questions. What are you most excited for in 2023? And yeah, what's keeping you fired up for this year?
So obviously FarmHER and Summer 75. But my hubby and I are restoring a vintage motorhome and gonna hit the road, and I'm gonna photograph out there on the road. And that's what's really kind of like
Wow.
that's a big thing. Yeah. So that's what I'm
Uh,
super excited for.
another project in the works. And how long would this road trip be? Where will you be going? Have you fleshed out those parts of it out?
So I live in Ontario, so we get the full 4 seasons. Um, this summer, little shorter trips, but next January, I want to drive till the air feels warm.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so whether that's all the way down to Baja, Mexico, I'm not sure, but definitely, and just photograph, um, kind of see what's out there and just
Mm,
photograph people and the places along the
incredible.
way. Yeah, that's as
Amazing. I
far as
love
I got. Yeah.
another exciting project. Again, super stoked to hear and see those images. For anyone who wants to keep up to date with you, is Instagram like a place that you'd be sharing this, or where would they see the work as it's coming to life?
Yeah, so Instagram's a good place. I have Heather Doughty Photography and Heather Doughty Fine Art Photography, and Inspire. But check out the Fine Art Photography if you want to find all those little one-off projects. Yeah.
Great, great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Heather. Wishing you all
Thank
the best for 2023, and I hope our
you.
paths can cross very soon.
Oh, yes, let's meet in person, have a coffee,
At
talk about
last.
it. Yeah.
Definitely. Take care, Heather. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Okay, bye-bye.